Hey everyone, welcome to this week's edition of Thursdays with Mike. And I've been reading a book. That's shocker. That's just a shocker, I know. Reading a book by Jefferson Bethke, To Hell with the Hustle, which I can't actually hold up to show you because it's digital. Maybe just a little bit of context here. I'm still in my cell out at NIH. It's kind of what this is. And this is actually July 9th, which was the day we were supposed to be flying home, but this is just going to turn, I think, into a full month here. Thankful for the interruption of having a week to drive all over the place and tour battlefields and such with my daughter Rihanna. But it's so it's back here. So I'm just doing some of these now, and Mitchell, who God bless him, he just basically takes these and schedules them, and then they run. And I'm trying to let him get ahead since they're expecting a baby anytime now, and this way it's one less thing on his plate. So I'm just going to be getting some of these out here. I'm not going to bother changing my shirt. So I'm going to look the same for several weeks, probably, because I'm just going to help him get ahead. So anyway, okay, so Jefferson Bethke's book, To Hell with the Hustle, which, I love the title. I mean, that's just awesome. He says he makes the point he's not being meaning to be like crude or offensive, which people in our culture, of course, wouldn't think that's rude and offensive, but Christian culture would be another thing. But to hell with the hustle, he says literally, to hell with it, because we are so driven. He describes it as a tsunami that just pushes us forward, and Jesus moves at a pace of 3 miles an hour, because that's the intentional pace of love. Anyway, so been reading that book, and I came across this marvelous bit on keeping time. And it was a marvelous little excursion into history of timekeeping that I was just unaware of. I love finding things I'm not aware of because I'm not aware of so very many things. But he says back in 1657, Christian Huygens, a Dutch mathematician and physicist and inventor, evidently, I mean, he's just one of those at the top inventors that I'm sure sometime in grammar school or high school I came across Christian Huygens, but I had no recollection of him whatsoever. And his greatest invention was the pendulum clock in 1656, 1657-ish. But he invented a spring mechanism that finally allowed timekeeping to be fairly accurate, and which allowed the determination of longitude at sea, which was an enormous breakthrough for the era of navigation. So time always had been something local, and of course it continued to be. This clock actually was the most precise time-keeping device for like 300 years, till the mid-20th century. I think at that point we went to atomic clocks, which the precision is just wacko, just how precise the atomic clock is. But time was local, and basically the community determined it on the location of the sun, and from ancient times at any rate, and you kind of got up with the sun, went to bed with the sun at night and such. But with the invention of time, things shifted, and of course many conveniences, and literally lives saved. Because, for instance, when locomotives become a primary means of transportation in this country and there's not a standardized time, trains run into each other and people die. So it was kind of important to find a standardization of time, since, as he says, American Railways recognized 75 different local times in 1875. 3 of those were in Chicago alone, so it depends on which side of Chicago you're in as to what time it is. Kind of makes it hard to arrive at meetings on time, wouldn't it? But anyway, so it was a huge deal. But so the question of standardization then came in, and that's when in the UK, railways adopted railway time, which was based on Greenwich Mean Time, set by the famous observatory in the London borough of Greenwich. And so then the railways, they ran on one specific time based on a time from one specific location. Standardization. City officials started to see the immediate and immense benefit of adopting standardized time across the board. And just guess what happens next? Because it's like, I know what he's going to say next. I'm unaware of this history, but it's like, I know what he's going to say next. I know exactly what's coming. Yeah, city officials started to see the immense benefit of adopting standardized time across the board, and then people started resisting. Hard. India probably saw the most extreme revolution in what historians call the Battle of the Clocks in 1906. Thousands of cotton mill workers rioted in Bombay. They refused to work and threw rocks at the factories. As the Atlantic notes in their telling of the story, they were protesting the abolition of local time in favor of a new Indian Standard Time based exactly 5.5 hours off the famous Greenwich Observatory. This battle went on for 50 years. Okay, 50 years. It wasn't until 1950, 3 years after their independence as a country, that a single time zone was adopted for the country. And Bethke goes on to mention that the French felt similarly, adopted standardized time as a country, but refused to set that time by an English observatory. They set ground zero for time in Paris, thank you very much, the greatest city in the world. And in fact, there was a bomb plot. I guess a bomb exploded in February 1894, and it was a Frenchman, and it failed. I mean, he just blew off his arm, I guess. But evidently it was intended for the Greenwich Observatory. It just sounds like a James Bond plot. We shall destroy standardized time. Okay, I sounded more like German or something. But anyway, it's just, wow. Humans just don't change. We just don't change. I'm thinking of the way. First of all, I'm thinking of the way we react to anything the government or a government, our government, other governments, people in charge do, telling us what we have to do. And so, yeah, they started resisting hard. And I'm seeing, oh my gosh, this is another global conspiracy. And that's kind of where it took me, is just, this human tendency for seeing conspiracies and things and bolting at, or revolting at these constraints and seeing sinister motives behind them. And so it just prompted some thoughts on conspiracies. And I think, first of all, we need to note that sometimes conspiracies are right, because people do conspire. All right, this happens. There was a conspiracy of senators that murdered Julius Caesar on the Ides of March in 44 BC. I remember the story from Elie Wiesel's Night about a member of the community that was a frequent visitor in Elie Wiesel's home. This is prior to the Holocaust. It's when the Nazi reign of terror is ramping up, and this is just a village of people, and so they think it's going to pass them by, but they just don't believe it. First of all, they just can't believe the stories, and this one frequent visitor to the village began telling of whole towns being deported and murdered or sent to camps, and they were never seen again, and nobody believed him. You're just crazy, but then they heard about a village that was deported, a nearby village that was deported, and this frequent visitor, showed up on Elie Wiesel's porch for one last time and just said, "I told you! I told you!" And then ran off into the woods and was never seen again. And soon, yes, the whole village was deported, because, yes, there was a conspiracy. The Nazis were conspiring, and they conspired to take power by burning the Reichstag and then blaming it on the communists. So, yeah, scheming happens. So maybe we shouldn't be too dismissive. This actually is what happened with Lot in Genesis 19, right? You have the two angels coming to Lot, telling him that the city is going to be destroyed, and to gather his family together. And he's unsuccessful even getting his own son-in-laws to listen to him, because as he told them that God is going to destroy this place, it seemed to them that he was joking. So they just laughed. Oh gosh, Lot, you're always sitting in the city gate. You're just this wacko. And of course the city burned. So conspiracies happen, and sometimes people sounding alarms. Okay, so don't just be dismissive, but at the same time, we can be consumed in this. And I think some of it, like with conspiracy theories, which is almost like a pastime in this country when it comes to things like the assassination of JFK. I mean, it's almost like we're just, well, there's a paranoia, and we also cannot, maybe there was a conspiracy with JFK. I've watched all kinds of documentaries and films, YouTube videos, Oliver Stone's movie, and then I've watched and read other accounts that had, well, it was the lone nut that did it, Oswald, and so forth. And I think probably one of the best summations of this, in this specific case, was, we invent conspiracies for the simple reason it gives us a sense of having control. Because if one unbalanced individual could so shatter the world, or one virus could shatter everything, uncontrolled, random, then all life is reduced to chaos. And so we need our conspiracy theories to help give us a sense that this is all under control somehow, and we can fight this thing. But what if life is just exceedingly random, and one lone individual or one random mutation, and a virus can actually just unhinge everything, and that can be pretty terrifying. So if, I would just give you this. It's like we're at this nexus of the perfect storm of conspiracies with the coronavirus, Chinese, United States connections, and then Bill Gates and vaccines, and the mark of the beast 666, and a chip, and a cashless society, and then you can throw in 5G, and there's so much, and wow, they could be right. And there's a whole lot of talk and videos and smart and passionate and sincere people who are stating them. So it's the balance thing, I guess. In this, we want to keep our heads. I want to give you this in the context of conspiracies, not to poo-poo them, or mock people. I've told this story before. I don't know if here or elsewhere. Sorry if I just become repetitive here, because I just can't remember where I say things anymore. But in 2008, after the election of Obama, there was a dear, sweet woman. I think she was in her 70s. We'd had frequent conversations. I was managing the bookstore, the church bookstore at the time, and she came in and she was literally trembling, and she asked if I could help her get some boxes of books out of her car because she wanted to donate them, and there was quite a few boxes of books, and she's trembling, and she's as I asked her what's going on, so I mean, it's like you're shaking, and she said, they're coming for us. I said, who's coming for us? And he said, Obama. The U.S. government is coming for us. railroad cars are prepared. They've got the freight cars, and they have the camps, and I've seen the videos, and they're coming for us. And so I'm giving everything away, selling everything, and I'm going into hiding. And well, I guess she wasn't right. Maybe she was right, but it was the wrong administration. But 2008. Okay, that's 12 years ago now, right? 12 years, yeah. And I just remember taking her hands in mine and just saying, "Can I pray with you?" And I prayed Philippians 4 over her, which is Paul as he is chained to guards in Rome, awaiting his trial before Nero, is talking about this sense of contentment and peace, this peace that passes understanding, and so forth. And so I just prayed the passage over her. So what do we say to people who are just gripped by conspiracies? I want to give you something besides Philippians 4. That's a good place to go. Philippians is just an excellent place for us to root into so we don't lose our minds in this season. But it's actually Isaiah, and this is kind of a go-to place for me when confronted by the latest conspiracy and excitement. And this is what, so this is how this reads. Isaiah chapter 8, verse 11, God spoke strongly to me. Now I'm reading the Message. Because I just like the way it flows here. Again, that's a shocker. I know that's a shocker. But God spoke strongly to me. The Hebrew, literally, God spoke with a strong hand upon me. So the idea is he's like, whoa, okay. Maybe it's both hands. I can't, okay, yeah. So, God's hand is upon him. Just think if you're putting your hands on somebody's shoulder and turning their attention to you because you've got something really important to say, and your hands are weighing heavily upon them. That's kind of the idea of this. So this isn't just, hey, Isaiah, got a thought. Or God just appearing in a video like this that, hey, here we are. It's Thursdays with Yahweh. No, he's actually, God grabs him. God spoke strongly to me, grabbed me with both hands, and I looked at that word because I just do that. I follow the footnotes, and I just follow the words. I'm always wondering what is the Hebrew behind that. Is Peterson, is this a good reflection of the Hebrew? And the Hebrew word is yashar, which basically means to chasten with blows. Which, then I'm looking through to see other places where it's used, just get a feel for it. And yeah, typically it's chastising, punishing. My father chastised you with whips. I'm going to chastise you with scorpions. So, literally, it's this, okay? And maybe that's a little bit of what Isaiah is getting. It's like that classic scene from Airplane with a woman who's freaking out on the plane and she's slapped, and then somebody else comes up and slaps, and then you see a whole line of people through the plane, and they're holding clubs and baseball bats and chains and brass knuckles, and they're just working her over. That's actually Yashar. Interestingly, there's a psalm. The psalmist says that God instructs me in the night. That's Yashar. He beats me up in the night. He's doing this in the night because it's not he instructs me. It's like, no, he's beating me up in the night. In a way, maybe that's why I thrash in bed sometimes at night. And look, and this one was especially good. So I'm geeking out on a Hebrew word. But the mother of King Lemuel taught him what we know as the poem of the virtuous woman. She taught him. It's Yashar. Okay, so this is the king's mother taking her son, the king, and going, listen to me. So I don't know. Maybe she didn't like who some of his consorts were. I don't know. But that's the force behind her teaching of her royal son. I just love that. So anyway, but that's what this is here. Maybe Isaiah's freaking out, and so God just puts both hands upon him, as it were, and just gives him a good slapping. Although Peterson's, he grabbed me with both hands and warned me. That can sound more, I don't know, gentle perhaps, but no, the Hebrew word's not gentle. It's okay. Okay, he's just getting Isaiah's attention. And so God spoke strongly to me, grabbed me with both hands, and warned me not to go along with this people. And then he said, don't be like this people, always afraid someone is plotting against them. Don't fear what they fear. Don't take on their worries. If you're going to worry about the holy. Fear God of the angel armies. That's the Lord of hosts. Adonai Sabaoth. Seems like we did one of these a while back on that, the Lord of hosts. That's the God with power. All right. The God with power behind him when you need him. You don't need the gentle lamb. You actually need the white horse charging God who's going to do business. And so fear God of the angel armies. The holy can either be a hiding place or a boulder blocking your way, the rock standing in the willful way of both houses of Israel. And it goes on from there. There was a lot of talk of conspiracy in those days. And actually they were right about a lot of it. Damascus and several other nations. Well, actually, I think it was Damascus, the Syrians, and the northern kingdom of Israel conspiring against the southern kingdom. And they were just obsessed with that conspiracy and what was going to come of it and so forth. And the conspiracy was real. I mean, those two nations had joined in league together to undo the southern kingdom. And God just basically says, well, you guys, listen, don't fear them. Eyes to me. Eyes to me. Okay, so I've got this and I've got you. And that's essentially the message that's coming through here in Isaiah 8. And interestingly enough, Peter picks up on this, 1 Peter chapter 3, speaking to his generation some 700 years later. And he actually telegraphs and echoes these very words. Peter talks about that, he says, who's going to harm you if you're eager to do what's right? But even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, for doing what's right, well, just don't be afraid of their threats and don't be troubled. That's these words right here. Don't fear what they fear. Don't take on their worries. And as he then puts it, it's not worry about the holy, the God of the angel armies. He just says, sanctify Christ in your hearts as Lord, and be ready to give an answer to anyone who asks you a reason for the hope that lives within you, but do with gentleness and with respect, so they have nothing evil to say about you. In other words, we're meant to be a calming influence in the midst of all the freak out panic. Humans are always freak out panicking. That's kind of like our natural condition. Either that or apathy, one of the two. We just want to avoid the extremes of freaking out and apathy. So let's be aware, but there's a calming presence that we can bring in the midst of this. And it's not dismissing or being dismissive of conspiracies and fear, and it's taking people seriously, taking their fears seriously, but refusing to join the party. That just seems to me to be a really solid word on so many levels. Just refuse to join the party, people. Let's worry about the holy. Sanctify Christ in your hearts as Lord, which simply means that front and center. And sometimes perhaps this is what God needs to do to us. I would say, don't do this with people. Don't yashar people who are afraid with conspiracies. But this is what we need to allow God to do with us. We just need to let him work us over a little bit, and then it's eyes. Okay, eyes to me, eyes to me. All right, watch me. That's what we used to say to we had a few dogs over the course of 40 years of marital life, and And it was the watch me, getting the dog's attention, which was always a challenge. God says, tell me about it. So, gosh, there you are. Isaiah 8 is a good place to root into, personally. Don't throw it and beat up people with it, but model it. All right, model it. Remember who is God of the angel armies. Don't be dismissive of the fears of others, but let's refuse to join the party. And let's be that calming influence. Maybe that is one of the key ways we can be salt and light in this moment in our culture, is actually bringing a calming influence into the midst. Sometimes there are things to be done, yes, but let's be agents of calm, shall we? So there you go, and I will see you next time in the next Thursdays with Mike. Take care, folks.